Mr. Takei, first of all, thank you so
Oh,
much
call me
for speaking to
George.
me. George, okay. Thank you so much to speak to us. I love the book. First of all, it was really important to me. This is following the success of They Call Us Enemy. So I want to know, besides the success, what made you come back to comics?
Well, I learned quite a bit from they called us enemy. Um, I wanted to reach as young an audience as possible. This is what happened to us during the Second World War is part of American history, a very revealing part of American history, the fragility of our democracy. We have these glowing, shining ideals, but we are fallible human beings and we make mistakes. And so this is an important story for Americans to know. And I wanted to, and so many Americans don't know because it wasn't taught in our history books. Certainly when I was a child, I looked through all the libraries that I came across, and I couldn't find a thing in the libraries. And later on, when I was an adult, I discovered that there are some academics that were writing about it, but these academic books were not accessible to the general public. And so it was still a little known chapter of American history and Japanese American history. As a matter of fact, many Japanese Americans of my parents' generation didn't talk about it with their children who were born after the Second World War. And so while I was doing the Broadway musical Allegiance about the internment of Japanese Americans, I discovered that there are younger Japanese Americans who know little, if anything, of their own family history. So I realized that this is an important part of American history that all Americans should know about because it's American history. And so I wanted to reach as many people as possible and younger people. I did another book which was a children's picture book, so I reached them. But when we were released from imprisonment after the war, I discovered comic books, and it opened up a whole new world. We had no access to any books in camp. We were in a prison, and so we didn't have access to any books at all, and certainly comics were forbidden. No radio, no newspapers. So we were imprisoned in the most isolated places in America, the deserts of the West, or we were in the swamps of Arkansas, the American South. And later from there, after the so-called loyalty questionnaire, we were segregated to another camp, the most the harshest of all the camps, because my parents answered no, no to the loyalty questionnaire, which was in the cold, not the hot desert of the American West, but of Northern California, right by the Oregon border. And so I wanted, they called us enemy, to reach younger people as well. And I discovered that many young people were exposed to that. But I wanted even younger people to know about it, so I did a children's book. But something else that I discovered with they called us enemy was that older people who, as they become very elderly, find it challenging to read written books, and they enjoyed the comic book storytelling. So I reached a larger demographic readership. And so that's why I thought the graphic memoir form would help me reach a lot of people. And so I repeated it with, it rhymes with Takei.
Yeah, and telling your story, you're kind of telling the whole story of the LGBTQ movement because as you go through many decades, you can see like the political changes in America happening. What do you want those kids to take away when they find this book?
Well, we have a very complex history in the United States. Our democracy is a wonderful ideal, glorious ideal, and despite the fact that I lived through the incarceration, I was a child, and I remember how scary it was. Those soldiers with the bayonets on their rifles, ordering us around, constantly being herded in groups, and the sentry towers with their flashlights at night, exploring every movement of people. And so I remember the terrorizing aspect of our incarceration, but I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand it. And so when I became a teenager, I wanted to understand why we were in prison. My parents told us that we hadn't done anything wrong. We weren't criminals, and yet we were treated like terrorizing criminals. We can understand that by looking at what's happening in the United States now with the issue of immigration. So I wanted to understand it. So I had many after dinner conversations with my father. My father was a unique person in my estimation because he spoke both Japanese and English fluently. And uh, uh, while we were incarcerated in three different camps, my father was played a leadership role in all three camps. Uh, he was able to communicate with the camp authorities. He was able to deal with the problems within the block. The camp was divided into blocks, and he needed to be able to speak Japanese to deal with the immigrant population, as well as the American-born English-speaking generation. So he was elected a block manager, and so he knew a great deal about the inner workings and the divisions that evolved in the camps themselves among Japanese Americans, people who wanted to cooperate with the government, and those who said, "You're stupid. Why are you cooperating when they're treating us like this? They've taken your money, your home, destroyed your business." And so we were fractionalized. And so what was the question now? I have a tendency to ramble and lose the point.
Particularly about LGBTQ history, the idea that kids will be reading it for the first time about LGBTQ history when they find this comic book. What is the takeaway? Do you want them to walk away from this book?
What does it take to what?
What is the takeaway? What do you want the kids to learn from this book, this particular part of your life?
You mean the graphic memoir format?
No, I mean your journey as a LGBTQ person. I know for myself, being a kid, I really wanted to have books like this when I was young, to help me come out, to see that is a struggle, to see there's a shining light in the end. I really want to know what do you think is the important message those LGBT kids can take away from this book?
The important message is that our democracy, in its purest form, is a shining ideal, a government of the people. When I was having these after dinner conversations with my father, he quoted often from Abraham Lincoln's famous speech at Gettysburg. There's a phrase that he used that goes, our democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's a noble ideal, a government of the people, ruled by the people. But as glowing and as shining as those ideals are, we, the people, are fallible human beings. We make mistakes. And so if we're going to be the people who govern ourselves, we have to be able to absorb the thinking of many people, those that really understand the ideals of democracy. And so participation by as many people, and hopefully many people that understand the responsibilities that we as citizens have to engage, to actively participate in the process of democracy. And my father quoted from Abraham Lincoln's A Government of the People, by the people, and for the people. He said, we are fallible human beings, and sometimes under unique circumstances, even great presidents can show themselves to be fallible human beings. He said during the 30s, 1930s, he admired President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's leadership. Our economy was broken. Millions of people were unemployed. Some were homeless and hungry, and the spirit of America was broken. But President Roosevelt said to them, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. Let's participate in building up our American economy. And he did, and our government came up. And it's the same thing when Pearl Harbor was bombed. The whole country was swept up with war hysteria, combined with racism. We looked different. In fact, we looked exactly like the people who bombed Pearl Harbor. And the majority of Japanese Americans lived on the West Coast. And Roosevelt realized that the West Coast of America was just like Pearl Harbor. It was open, undefended, and vulnerable to an attack. And so, with the fear of people that look like this and all that, and the hysteria that swept the country, he signed Executive Order 9066, which ordered all Japanese Americans to be summarily rounded up and imprisoned in barbed wire prison camps. So those after dinner conversations with my father made me understand the circumstances that led to our imprisonment. And he said, because our democracy is a people's democracy, he said, I want all my children, and he had three of us. Me, I was the oldest, Next was my brother, and the youngest was my sister. And he said he wanted all of us to be actively involved at school. He said, volunteer for any charitable causes. If there were any wildfires and there was a need to send aid to them, volunteer to put together those care packages, volunteer to raise funds. And so I was active in those causes. I joined many clubs, and I was active in student government. And in middle school, I was elected student body president. And in high school, in my senior year, I was elected senior board president. And so I was actively involved. And that was because of what I learned from my father during our after dinner conversation, that a government of the people requires responsibility being taken up by citizens who care about our government and actively participate, know the issues, certainly vote, share your knowledge with other Americans. It is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we try to make it that. But we are all fallible human beings. And we have to be mindful of that fact. And we're certainly being reminded right now, today, in America, of that fact. We have fallible human beings that are bossy, authoritarian, and they can do enormous damage. But we the people who believe in democracy, can ultimately overcome.
Those after dinner conversations, they're echoing both books, I think, and there's my favorite parts of both books because you had those after dinner conversations with your dad. For me, it was like Saturdays afternoons watching Star Trek with my dad, so that was very meaningful to me. But there's one term in this book, it rhymes with a K, you use is silence harassment, and that stayed with me a lot because I feel like it gave a name to a feeling that I have experienced in my life as a LGBTQ person. I'm interested in knowing how was the process of turning this feeling, this undescribable thing we all experience in something visual, in something that kids could understand in this comic book.
Well, I had in my life two imprisonments. When I was a child, we were imprisoned. Japanese Americans were imprisoned because we looked like this. That's all. We had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor. We're Americans. And yet, because we looked like this, we were seen as the enemy. And we were arrested at gunpoint. Soldiers with bayonets on their rifles came to our home, banged on the front door, and ordered us out of our home and put into these prison camps. It was totally an irrational, fear motivated action. And horrible things can happen, even with great leaders who should know better. And that happened to us during the Second World War. We have to be participants in that. We are small. Japanese Americans are a small minority, and an even smaller minority in the Japanese American community spoke English, and their participation in government was even smaller. So we had very little participation. We had Japanese Americans who understood our situation, but it was Japanese Americans were like all Americans. they were swept up by the horror of the bombing, and compounded by the hatred that confronted us because we looked like this. And so, again, I have a tendency to ramble. Repeat the core of your question to me, if you
The
will.
silent harassment.
Oh, silent harassment, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my childhood imprisonment. But as I was growing older, and this is after our imprisonment, I was making another discovery of myself. I was not only visibly different, looking like this, but I felt differently. I was attracted to other boys, my classmates, Bobby Corral, Richard Montana, and I noticed that the other boys weren't feeling the way I felt, just me. And having had that childhood imprisonment because we looked different, I was discovering that with my second difference, it was happening inside me. It wasn't visible. I just felt attracted to Bobby or Richard or James. I could hide it. I could pretend like all the other boys. And as I grew up and the other boys started dating girls, I wanted to be one of the boys, so I dated other girls. And so I had this feeling that I'm different. I feel differently. I'm acting like I'm like the other guys, and then as I grew older, I hear I was closeted. This and I felt that I had this silent or imagined barbed wire fence, just like when I was a child. But now, because of my difference was internal, I could hide it. I could act like everybody else. And I was going to school, participating in athletics. I, I was a good student. I was getting good grades. So I was like everybody else, but knowing that I was very different from everybody else, that I was hiding it. And as I grew older, and in the book I talk about that scene where on a movie set, we have crew people. There are more crew people than actors, and the crew people are talking about that gay bar, but they use the word faggot, and that's a very hurtful word. But I was building a career, closeted, and I felt anger and shame when the crew people were talking amongst themselves and and discriminated against, but I was able to hide it and bite the bullet silently, not participating. And that's the silent harassment that I felt. And I felt it out all over my body. This terrible feeling of anger, embarrassment, of shame, all combined. And I had to keep it all inside the body and my mind. I was harassed without my participation in that harassment at all. I had to remain silent because I wanted to protect career, my career that I have been building over all these many years. That's what I mean by silent harassment, and I visualize that in that.
It impacted me very much. It was a very strong word to use. I want to talk about, just to finish, another important part of this book was your criticism of making Sulu gay on the Star Trek newest movie. And the comic book industry certainly has been struggling a lot on how to get representation right, how to not just be tokenism. So, what is the advice you have for comic book creators, comic book editors that want to get this right?
Well, things were changing. I was closeted. I was hiding who I was by acting like everybody else. But there were people that were not like me. They were out. They were trying to protect themselves. They were gay. They acknowledged it, and they were activists campaigning for equality, justice, to be treated decently, equally. And because of their campaigning, the world around me was changing. And I was benefiting from their activism. But I had nothing to do with it. And I felt guilty because I was an activist on other social justice issues. I was involved in the civil rights movement for African Americans. I met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at one of the rallies that we went to. I was active in the peace movement during the Vietnam War, and going to rallies and speaking for peace. But I was silent on the issue that was very personal, very, well, my issue. And these other guys and gals were out there campaigning and bringing change about, which filled me with guilt. Not only was it rage or embarrassment that I was keeping hidden, but feeling guilty while I'm talking about equality for African Americans or peace in Vietnam. Hypocritical. This LGBTQ equality was my personal issue, and I was silent on it because I had to protect my career. If it was known that I'm gay, producers won't hire me. So protecting my job opportunity, I was dependent on the activists. So there was all this emotion held within me, feeling guilty and grateful that they were doing it, but I should be with them. The multiple weight, that goosebump feeling all over me on so many different levels. Anger at the injustice, feeling my rage and sense of inequality inside myself, and wanting to participate, and frustrated on that because I love my acting career, and at the same time, I had to bite the bullet.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having the courage to finally tell your story. And it was an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Things change, and we are the change makers, and you too, and your life too. You're making a lot of changes from Brazil to Germany and Berlin, the most fascinating city in Germany, I think. Good
Yeah,
talking with you, and thank you very much
thank you
for
so much.
spreading a word about it rhymes with Takei.
I love the book so much. Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.